The ability to speak might not make you intelligent, but we're going to try to prove otherwise. This is the Clashing Sabers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon, and I'm here with my stupendous co-host. He is the lower half of Maul and the upper half of Ludivario. It's Davor. How are we doing today? I am good. I have a 3-day weekend ahead of me. Very much looking forward to that. I am just excited about life and excited to be back on the mic. It's been a minute since we recorded. It's been a minute since I've recorded it all. We fell a little behind on Sith Talk, so we're going to get back on that, and we're back here for Clashing Sabers. So excited to talk tonight. We're going to be talking about harmony in your surroundings tonight, which is going to be an interesting topic to delve into. For those of you who have been playing along at home, we are going through the different chapters in the Star Wars themed book that I'm writing called The Jedi Path 2, which is looking at 16 different elements of what it means to be a Jedi in our world. And so we're going through each of those topics and just kind of exploring the ideas together and jamming on it and talking some Star Wars. So very much looking forward to this conversation. But Davor, since it's been a minute since we've been on the mic, update people on just how's life, how are you doing, what's new? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a month from the time of this recording, and thus less than a month from when you guys are listening, we're gonna have a new Star Wars movie, which is it's wild.
For a long time, we weren't sure if we could ever say those words.
I know, and it's weird too. This is so we've had a movie that led into a TV show, right? But we've never had a TV show that led into a movie. So this is a whole new territory for Star Wars. So we've gotten some trailers, we've gotten some tidbits. I know there's a clip out there that I've avoided with Zeb in an action scene. There's all kinds of stuff out there about Mando and Grogu. How are you feeling a month out from this new Star Wars movie?
I think maybe cautiously optimistic, I would say. You know, I think some of the latter trailers that we've gotten and things like that, I think, again, I mean, we sort of talked about this, I think, when they released the full, like the first, like, full trailer or whatever it was a little while back. Like, I think, you know, I am expecting sort of action adventure, that sort of big popcorn flick, and yeah, hoping to be surprised. I think that's the big thing. Like, I want to go in there and like, wow, this exceeds my expectation. I thought I was going to get one thing, and then, you know, it took us in some other interesting directions.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential. Some of the later trailers have made me feel like it's going to get a little deeper than we expected, especially this most recent trailer that starts with Grogu meditating. That maybe we're going to get some things that are I don't know if we're going to get like darker themes like we're getting in Shadow Lord. I don't think this is designed for that, but some more complicated themes than just good versus evil and you know, bad guys, good guys, shoot each other, bang them up, kind of thing. So I'm excited about the potential of that as we get a little bit closer and as we start to see more tidbits come out. I think there's going to be kind of how we've talked about before, this struggle with the Mandalorian, Din, and his role in Grogu's life and how limited that's going to be. And I think that that's going to be a powerful thing of like, what's our lasting legacy that we have as we're doing these things and dealing with these things.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of story they tell and how they develop the relationship. Because like you said, I think the trailers have hinted a lot that there's going to be about the relationship between the two of them and how it's growing and changing. And so, yeah, I hope they take the characters in some, you know, that they challenge them and that they give them opportunities to sort of grow and develop.
Yeah, for sure. sitting here right now, and we'll do our best and butts preview of Mando and Grogu. What is just gut feeling, something that you feel like will almost guarantee this movie to be a success for you, and what's something that you're very tentatively optimistic, because you said that you're kind of tentatively optimistic. What's making you that?
I think what's making me tentatively optimistic is just I think just sort of the previews that we've gotten it so far, like the content that we have in the trailers. Again, we still don't know really all that much about what the plot is going to be. I think like we're still most of the promotional material is still kind of leaning into sort of vibes. But I think the vibes are, again, I think the vibes are promising for the movie.
Yeah, and what would make it successful for you? Whether it's something in the movie or a reaction to the movie. What's your, I guess better question is, what's your measure of success for this movie? Are you looking at box office? Are you looking at how you feel walking out? Are you looking at crowd, social media reaction? What's going to measure this for
That's a good question. I think probably I think what's going to probably matter most to me, I think, is probably my reaction coming out of the theater.
you? Mm-hmm.
Is, am I going to, do I have the feeling of like, wow, this is like great, Star Wars is back, hell yeah? Or am I going to feel like sort of like, I think you would talk about, I don't know if we have used the Solo comparison, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
that reaction of like, I enjoy this, but it might be my least favorite Star Wars movie. Like that sort of
Yeah.
like that little bit of split. Or am I going to leave and then just feel like, like okay, like could have been on Disney Plus, like this meeting could
Yeah.
have been an email, like sort of that, right? Like do I end up feeling that way?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a spot with it where I kind of want it to fall in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker for me, which is saying I want it to fall between my favorite experience in a Star Wars movie in theaters and my least favorite experience in a Star Wars movie in theaters, which is totally unfair. But like, what I immediately go to is like, when I go to theaters to see Star Wars movies now, and then maybe this is unfair, I want that Force Awakens feeling of Star Wars is back. Right,
Yeah.
because it's been 7 years. Okay, that's way different than 20, but 7 years with all the Star Wars that we're getting is a long time. And so when I'm really consuming anything new with Star Wars, I want that feeling of Star Wars is back. I'm getting that with Maul, where it's like Star Wars animation is back, right? And I want that with Mando and Grogu. I don't want to set the bar so low as to say like I don't want to walk out and think it's my least favorite Star Wars movie, but I also don't want to set the bar so high as to say like it needs to be my favorite Star Wars movie, right? And so if it lands somewhere where I can go like, man, like I'm going to see it 5 times, I think, guaranteed already. I don't want to dread going to see it, because like I'm traveling and seeing it. I'm going to Indiana to see Zach and we're going to go see it. I'm going to Florida to see Mark and we're going to go see it. I don't want to be like, hey, you want to maybe just skip it and do something else today?
Right. Yeah.
And if I look forward to going to the movie multiple times, I think I'll be able to measure it as a success. So that's where it is for me. As far as other successes go, though, Maul is freaking killing it, dude. I love this show so much. So I know we usually like to save our reactions for season's end, but just as far as a journey through the season is going, like, how is Maul for you? Are you digging it, or is it not landing for you as far as Star Wars animation goes?
No, I'm enjoying it. I think I've had that sort of feeling of like Star Wars animation is back, like you were talking about. I think the show is visually gorgeous in the way that it's animated. I think we've gotten some great sort of action set pieces. I think story wise, there are some things that are you know are left to be desired at the moment, but I'm also tempering that reaction. Like we're 6 of 10, like we still have another third of the show to go, and we also now know that we're going to be getting a second season. Like if that were up in the air and we were in a situation where like, okay, is the next 4 like is that it? Like, is there only 4 more and then never again?
Yeah.
Then I'd be like even more like, oh boy, like there's some things that like we got to tackle here. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's hitting on all cylinders for me. I'm absolutely loving the show. I'm loving the story that they're developing, and I am a big fan of the slow burn. I want things to take their time. Like the first 3 episodes of Andor, love them. I know a lot of people were like, "What the heck is this?" I love that we took almost 3 hours to really get this show off the ground before things started happening, and that's what I feel with Maul on like a smaller scale because they're 23-minute episodes versus hour-long episodes, 45-minute, hour-long episodes. But it's taking the episodes and taking the time to develop things without doing what Thrawn does and like taking, eons to do it. Like it's a very delicate balance to slow burn something. And I feel like we kind of talked about this in the group chat a little bit, but how like episodes 5 and 6 did feel a little bit like shows that episodes that we've gotten before. But I think that that's kind of just the setup for the follow through that we're going to get in the last 4 episodes, and so I'm okay with that. I feel like the tension that was developed in episodes 1 through 4 really did a lot of heavy lifting for me, and I feel really, really solid about everything about this show. I'm excited about the music. I'm excited about the animation, and I'm really enjoying the characters. I challenged myself, and you guys can go to classicsabers.net to check these out, but I challenged myself to every week write an article about the new episodes that have come out. And it's been actually quite a challenge, but not because there's not anything to say, but because there's almost too much to say. And the show is delving deep enough to where these themes and dynamics, like the most recent one I wrote was about allies and enemies. And it's like there are so many ally and enemy dynamics that you could look at and explore that it's almost overwhelming. You'll have a 7,000 word piece coming out, right? And so I like that there's all these juxtapositions and dynamics that you can look at. It is, look, I don't want to say nothing's ever going to touch Andor because that's just unfair, but Andor is the pinnacle of writing and character development in Star Wars. And I think this is doing the animation version of that.
Wow, all right.
So it's really, really working for me. Clone Wars, I love, but it was you had your 3 episode arcs. Things happened very quickly. Then Rebels was much more of a slow burn, especially when you finally got to season 4 and you saw everything that they were doing. This feels like it's landing somewhere in the middle of things where they realize they have 10 episodes per season. They realize maybe they only have 2 seasons, so they are trying to get to a point, but they're not rushing to it at the same time. And I feel like now that Filoni's in charge, at least on the creative side of things, he knows what the check is that he has to play with, and he's going to tell his story in those parameters. So I think this story is going to be told completely, regardless of ratings and everything. But the ratings are really good. It's like the highest rated show right now. So really good vibes there, and really looking forward to the next 2 weeks. That's all we've got left of this show. It's crazy. And then we'll talk about it on here and do our best and butts looking at the season. I may have taken May the 4th off just to be able to watch the whole show all the way through, or I may have some very important personal business to do if you're anybody at work that's listening. So we'll find out what happens. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing the end of the season, and really looking forward to the full album release that comes out, hopefully on May the 4th, because usually they release them pretty soon after the last episode. So, any other Star Warsing stuff you've got going on lately that is non-Mando or Maul related? Any books you're reading or shows you're watching?
We recently, this is a sort of preview for the next episode of Space Fifties. We recently rewatched Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you hate Return of the Jedi, according to the last episode of Space Swifties, but we don't have to go there. This is a family-friendly show.
It was. Yeah, we did some playlists and kind of talked about Return of the Jedi. This is sort of a preview for the episode. Like both of our respective lists and the songs that we kind of picked for the movie, like both sort of ended up kind of highlighting like what our favorite things respectively about the movie are. And in my case, like it wasn't even conscious. I didn't even go to a thing like I'm gonna like really focused on these bits of the movie. It was really when I stepped back and looked and we sat down to talk about it, I was like, oh, okay, I spent almost the whole playlist talking about like these things. And like, oh, these are the things I love most about Return of the Jedi.
And spoiler alert, folks, it's Jabba's palace. Oh man. No, that's exciting. Guys, if you're not listening to Space Swifties, make sure you're going to subscribe over there because it's always good content coming out of that. Many hours of fun have been had on Space Swifties, and many more hours of fun shall be had. So make sure you check them out. For me, I've been so consumed with Maul. I haven't been doing a ton of other Star Warsing lately. Still working my way through Low Red Moon and enjoying that. Mike Chen is such a good writer that I don't think he could write a bad Star Wars book. It's not my favorite Star Wars book that's ever been written. Brotherhood is kind of his coup de grace, I think, of what he's capable of. But it's a really solid book, and I'm enjoying it. And actually, probably going to explore it a little bit more after we finish this episode. So let's hurry up and get going so I can get back to Mike Chen.
All right, let's do it.
Let's jump into our topic tonight. So, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm writing a Star Wars book. Not an official Star Wars book, a Star Wars themed book, if you will, that looks at how you can apply Jedi principles to your everyday life. So, exploring 16 different principles in the book that'll be coming out this holiday season. And looking at those, we said, you know what would be fun is let's just take the topic and not necessarily talk about what's in the book or what's not in the book or anything like that, but just hop on the mic and discuss these ideas through our own lenses and our own exploration. So some of the things may cross over, some of them might not. This is, a completely independent thing and also a companion of the book, but just taking some time to explore some of these deeper themes that we see in Star Wars that maybe don't always get the appreciation that they deserve because we're caught up in the next big thing that's coming out or things like that. So since we have this space here, we thought we would take that time. And this episode, like I mentioned, is about harmony in your surroundings, which I think is such a key to what it means to be a Jedi. So for you, Davor, what does it mean to you personally to have harmony in your surroundings? And what do you think it means in Star Wars?
All right. What I think it means, okay, so in a personal sense, harmony in your surroundings. I think I'm trying to think of like my own life. I would say that probably means like a life lived where everything is like where you're sort of like you're kind of like this, right? It's like you're not at either extreme in terms of like I don't know if I just think about like let's say like my own mood or emotions, like I'm not I'm not like super high in terms of like really frenetic or energetic or whatever, but I'm also not like all the way down and depressed and like very sad, not doing anything. Like, but I keep kind of that there's sort of like that kind of Goldilocks middle in terms of where
that's a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, like not too big, not too small, like just right.
Yeah. For me, kind of same thing. Like I think for me it means like moving with the flow of life and not against the flow of life, right? I'm somebody who I feel things in a very big way. My emotions tend to be very big and can be kind of overwhelming at times. And so it's not letting those big emotions control my reaction to them, and in taking the feedback that I'm getting from the world around me and processing it in a way where I am still like the one making the decisions, but I'm making them in unison with and in thinking about the impact that my decisions are going to have on the world around me. And that's what I see in Star Wars. Like, I think for me, it's being able to distinguish between the call of the Force and what is one's own will for themselves, right?
Mhm.
So in Star Wars, for you, like, what does harmony look like? Like, are there any examples that stand out, or is it any different in the galaxy far, far away?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are immediate examples that come to mind. I mean, you talked about the notion, like in your own personal life, like you talked about the idea of sort of going with the flow, and I think that's a big part in Star Wars. I think, like particularly in the context of the Jedi, I think there's a lot of like a big part of their teaching is this kind of like radical acceptance of like things that happen as kind of the will of the Force. Like we
Mm,
just talked about Return of the Jedi, right? Like you think about when Luke goes back on Dagobah and he sees the dying Yoda, and then Yoda has that line about like twilight is upon me and soon night must fall. That is the way of things, the way of the Force, right? So like that's like arguably right one of the most sort of like extreme examples of like a radical acceptance of like one's own mortality, right? The idea of like, okay, I'm
mm,
dying. This is just the way that it is, and it is going to be like that's the way. Like, there's no stopping it. There's no right. Like, there's no reversing it or anything like that. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing that he tries and fails to teach Anakin in at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, right? When he comes to him about the dreams, and tries to also sort of impart that kind of radical acceptance, and it doesn't work. But I think about that. I think about like again another example, also sticking with Yoda, but a different movie with Empire. I think about his whole speech about the Force, where he's talking about like the my ally is the Force. Life creates it. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Right, that idea of like being a part of this larger galaxy, right? Like, not attempting to kind of control it or bend it to one's will, but like just being like in this sort of in this
mm.
relationship. You think about, even this is coming to mind, like you think about like the way that Qui-Gon talks about like the midichlorians, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of like we're symbiotes, right? Like we're organisms existing for mutual advantage.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of ideology takes that radical acceptance that you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
of and I think radical acceptance gets confused sometimes, where it's like I'm just going to sit back and let things happen to me, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
and that's
level
not
of
it.
inaction, and that's not it at all.
No.
Radical acceptance is saying, like, this is what my situation is, and I am the one who gets to choose how I respond to it. Not in a I need to control things kind of way, but in a I have ownership over my own autonomy kind of way. And go ahead. No, you were going to
Yeah,
say
no,
something.
no. I was gonna say like there's to sort of your point, like there's that sort of understanding and appreciation of like the things that are within your control and what aren't,
Mm,
right? Like you have the control in terms of like your own feelings, your own reactions, like how you respond to things. But like something again, like something like death, like that is going to come for you, and it's like
yeah.
you can't stop it.
Yeah,
And so
that's
like
that's
right,
100%.
like that's where you have that's where you have that acceptance. Like when it comes to things like like injustice or pain and suffering in the galaxy or something like that, like that might be something where like you have the ability through your own sort of conscious decision and your own actions to actually like have an impact and make a difference, and you don't have to just sort of sit back and be like, well, this is the way that
Mhm.
things are, like I can't really do anything. But like
Yeah.
there are other things where it's like, yeah, okay, I will get old and I will pass away, and there's no like, strong in mind the Force, but not that strong.
Yeah, and I think there's a great example too, like with Rey and what Luke tells her about confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like if you're gonna be a Jedi, you're gonna have to face fear, right? And for Rey, there's this need that she has to develop to separate her fear and identity from what the Force is calling her to do. right? And she's letting this fear around her being a Palpatine, kind of lead her to that idea you were talking about, what radical acceptance is not, of, oh, I can't do anything about it, right? Where what Luke is telling her is, in that confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. It's like, that's the radical acceptance, is going, hey, no, you actually can do something about it.
Yeah.
You're actually maybe the only one that can do something about it. And I think that that's a really great look at what that can look like. So when you look, other than, we've talked about Rey, we've talked about Yoda, we've talked about Qui-Gon Jinn, like, what are some prime examples for you of other individuals in Star Wars being in harmony with their surroundings? It's like, I immediately go to Gunji, and that's part of what he has to learn in the Younglings arc, but especially in the Bad Batch appearance that he has, right, where he has to learn to be in harmony with Kashyyyk, right, which should be natural for a Wookiee. He has to learn to be in unison with the Wookiees. That should be natural for him, but it's not, and he has to learn how to be in harmony with that and accept that aspect of him. So are there any other ones that stand out to you particularly?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Let's see. So we've talked about the Yoda example. We've talked about Qui-Gon. We've talked about Gunji just now. We've talked about Rey.
I have one more big one, if you don't.
Go for it.
The Jedi of the High Republic, man. Like, like pretty much all of them, and the way they communicate with the Force. I think that being able to see the Force in different ways, to me, is having harmony. Right? Is Elzar not trying to see the Force the way that Avar does, but being able to accept and see that, like, everybody is different in that, and I'm going to be the Jedi the way that makes sense to me and that fits to me and that the Force is calling me to be. Vernestra Rowe, one of the reasons she's my favorite High Republic characters, I think she's the epitome of struggling with that, right? She's trying to be a Jedi in the way that Stellan Gios is a Jedi, right? Her master. But that's not who she is. And her journey is finding that harmony in her surroundings of, okay, I'm put in this situation with Imri where now I'm a master to somebody who's basically the same age as me. Like, how do I do that? And she's got to find harmony in what that means for her, and with the light whip and everything else. And so, just like permeated throughout the High Republic, I just see so many of these examples of Jedi trying to find harmony in their surroundings and succeeding in it. That's really, to me, that moment when Avar unites the Jedi at the Great Disaster and connects all their minds together. Like, that's the ultimate version of harmony in Star Wars, is all of these heroes who come from different paths of being a Jedi, who come from different interpretations of what the Force looks like and sounds like and feels like, all coming together for this greater purpose of serving the galaxy and protecting the galaxy, and protecting the lives of the billions of people that they save.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're right to kind of hone in on High Republic, because there are great examples. I mean, other ones that come to mind as you were talking about, like, I think about Bel Zettifar. Like, he has this whole journey where, he has obviously the experience of losing his master Loden, and he spends so much of the High Republic as sort of this firecracker, this live wire. Like, he's very intense. Like, he wants to, avenge Loden. He wants to take out the Nile and all of that. And then he has sort of the great moment in Trials where he finally gets the confrontation with Marchion, and then he has the conversation with Loden. And that sort of like pulls him back, kind of from the abyss, from kind of acting on his, anger, and then just killing Marchion right there. I think that's great. I think Burry is another fantastic example I think about. I think it is in Tears. I don't remember which book it is that he like makes the connection with the Nameless, and he does sort of like the healing thing.
Looking at my shelf right now.
It's maybe Tears. It's maybe another book.
No, it's one of the adult novels, I thought.
Okay. Oh, it's Tessa Temptation,
It
I think.
Temptation. I think yeah, Temptation for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, where he sort of like uses his own sort of like essence, like whatever it is, or like the
Mm-hmm.
force to kind of push back the nameless. I think he's another great example.
Yeah, Wreath too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Wreath has to really, like, he's hidden away in the Jedi archives for so long that he has to really find his way to have harmony in his surroundings by stepping out into the galaxy, and that's kind of his journey, right? It's not so much like him versus the nameless or him versus the Nile or anything like that, even though that is the external. Like the internal conflict for him is, how do I fit into this galaxy? And to me, that's what it actually means to find harmony in your surroundings, is finding where you fit in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And where you can get into that flow state, right?
Yeah.
And it was so funny. I had a kid in class the other day. I was like, hey, you don't really need to work on that right now. Like, that's something we can wait, because she was working on a group project and the rest of the group was out. I said, we can wait till the group gets back next week to finish that part of it. And she goes, I only get flow state like once or twice a week. I've got to do everything now. And I was like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
you do you, right?
Yeah.
But her saying like I only get it once or twice a week, that told me immediately like this kid's not built for traditional school, right? Like she's gonna do
Yeah.
something else successfully, right? Whereas like when you can just immediately get into that flow state by just deciding that's what I'm gonna do, right? Like that's, for me, that's writing. For me, that's teaching. For you, it may be something else, right? For the listeners, it may be something else. When you can just decide you're gonna get in that state, that is when I think you're really at harmony in your surroundings, and I think that starts with being at harmony with yourself.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So for you, like, what do you think that looks like in Star Wars? Like, when do we see those characters who are in sync and in harmony and in flow? Um, like, what is it actually like? We've talked about what does it look like. What does it actually mean for the characters? Like, what's the impact of it?
I think I think much like, I think to go back to something that you just said, like I think it does. I think there is sort of an understanding of like what one's purpose and what one's role is sort of in the moment. I think like I think that's really important. That's really key. Like I think we talked about this example maybe an episode or two ago, whenever we last did the ones in this particular series. But you think about something like the Obi-Wan Maul confrontation that we get in Rebels, right? And you think about that moment, like where the journey that Obi-Wan as a character has gone on up to that point, all the way through the prequels, and then his sort of his exile on Tatooine, and sort of his understanding at that point that like what he's there for is to be a protector for Luke and to kind of continue on the next generation. And he's not here to like quell a beef with Maul, right? Like he's kind of moved
Yeah.
on from that. Like that's in the past now. And he's looking ahead to like what he has to do in the future. And then like that ultimately all the way culminates to A New Hope, right? Where he sort of understands that like that his role is, escape is not his plan, right? Like as Vader says, right?
Yeah.
Like his role in the story is to make sure that Luke and Leia can get off, and that the rebellion has this chance to defeat the Empire, and that like his
Mhm.
part is sort of his part in the story is kind of done. Like it's also similar to, you think about the end of The Last Jedi with Luke, right? Like he reaches
Yep, that's where I was gonna go.
yeah, right. I will not be the last Jedi. And that he realizes that his purpose now is he has to make sure that the resistance lives. He has to make sure that Rey lives as the continuation of the order. And he's done everything that he possibly can. And his part in the story is now done.
Yeah, and he has that peace and purpose, right? That always stands out to me, is him having peace and purpose, and um him accepting that death is the consequence of that, right? Like
Yeah.
um and death is kind of shorthand in stories for the inevitable, right? And I think part of being in harmony is being able to go back to what you said earlier, accept the inevitable in life, right? Like that we're going to go through struggles, that we're going to face conflict, that, you know, like harmony, I think gets misconstrued as things are going to be easy, or there are no challenges and things like that. And I don't think that's at all what it means. I think it means being able to face those challenges head on and accept the inevitable parts of it, right? Like, to go back to your example, right? Obi-Wan has to accept that he has to finally kill Maul, right? Obi-Wan has to accept that his death. Luke has to accept his death. Yoda in Clone Wars having to confront his inner darkness and accept that. Like, all of that is part of finding harmony. Like, and what I think the journey, to kind of stick on Yoda for a second there, what I think the journey of becoming a Force ghost is really about is harmony, right? It's finding harmony in who you are, right? And that's really what Yoda goes through in that journey in season 6 of Clone Wars, when he goes on that journey to learn how to become a Force ghost. And so it's not, and it never is, and I don't think Star Wars is trying to say it's about it being easy. It's about it being worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
And then when we look at characters who are out of sync, when we look at like an Anakin Skywalker, a Kylo Ren, these characters who are tragic villains, right? Like, Palpatine's just a POS, right? Like, he's just not a good dude. He's not even trying to find harmony. But when you look at like a character like Kylo Ren, right, where he's saying like, I'm torn apart, he doesn't know what to do, like he thinks he has to choose the dark because that's the inevitable, right? And when we try to make something inevitable that is not inevitable, it throws us out of harmony, right? When Kylo is saying like, I have to accept the darkness kind of things, that's not true, right? That's not who he has to be, and which is why he can never find that sync. And then when he finds it by letting go of that preconceived notion of what he thinks people think he has to be, that's when he really finds the harmony, where he's able to give fully of himself, where he's able to rise up from the underground and be reborn. That is that moment of harmony there. So that leads to this idea of like, how do we figure out when we're out of sync, when we're out of harmony? Like, what are the telltale signs before we get to becoming Darth Vader, before we get to becoming Kylo Ren, right? Because like we all feel like that sometimes, right? Where we're trying to force outcomes, or we're feeling conflicted, or another example, you know, being like Saw Gerrera going to such an extreme to try to accomplish his goals that even his allies struggle to align with him, right? Like, he's out of harmony with his original purpose. How do we tell that we're going down that path before we get too far?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there's probably a couple telltale signs. I think there are, I think there are ones that are internal. So like, you think about like your own mental state, your own emotional state, and you sort of like sit down and like you sort of think about like, like really try to understand like, naming your emotions and your mental state. Like, you try to figure out like, am I finding that I am, frustrated regularly? Like, I'm trying to do things and they don't seem to be working out the way that I want them to. Or, like I'm constantly feeling like I'm a failure. Or do I feel like sad or depressed or things like that? Or do I have very strong strong emotions like, anger or things like either anger at myself or anger at other people or anger at, life situations. So I think there's that sort of, I think that's important, like to get that sort of like gut check in terms of where you are, mentally and emotionally and things like that. I think that can be a real tell. I think like having instability in like inside you and in your own head, I think can be a really important tell that like, okay, something about the way that I am in the world is also off. If I'm
Hmm.
having these reactions kind of in my head. And I think also what can be a tell potentially is like the way that other people are reacting to you or the effect that you're having on
Mm.
other people. Like are you in a situation whether it's in personal life in a relationship, right, with like a partner or with family or things like that, or friends or at work or whatever. Like, am I in a situation where like I'm getting along with people, things are good, there's no major conflicts, other people feel like they can be sort of open and honest and authentic with me, and like, or we're all kind of like working together and kind of achieving common goals? Or is there friction and tension and people are hiding things and going behind your back or things like that? And like, are there things that are unresolved, or are there problems that are festering and stuff like that? I think that can also be an important help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of that's spot on. And two, even like I think it's important to look at those relational aspects, right? Which is a lot of what you focused on. For me, I'd even add on, you talked a little bit about your own emotions and things like that. I'd add a layer on that of like, do the things that usually make you feel like yourself still make you feel like yourself?
Yeah.
Do the things that usually make you feel in sync make you feel in sync? Like, are you able, like, I was thinking about this maybe even yesterday. Like, for me, my writing time and my gym time that I have in the morning are my sync times. Like, if I'm writing and things are going well and I'm not getting distracted by other things, like that's a sign for me that I'm in harmony. If my workouts are feeling good and everything's flowing there, like that's a sign to me that everything else, I'm taking care of the other things in my life because I'm not weighed down emotionally, or distracted mentally, or physically, at a detriment, right? And so those things that usually bring you peace and purpose, to go to Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker. If those things are no longer bringing you peace and purpose, I think that's not. Oh, if it happens one time, it's one time. Maybe you
Yeah.
slept
Yeah.
bad, or maybe you burned yourself when you were cooking or something, right? Like you got an offender bender. But like if it's like 3 days, a week, something like that, I think that's a warning of, hey, maybe things aren't going the way you want, right? For Anakin, it was going not the way he wanted it for quite some time before. It seems like it happens quickly in Revenge of the Sith, but Revenge of the Sith happens over months, right? Not over a couple of days. And for Kylo, we don't know as much about how long of a time span like Snoke was influencing him. We have some touch points of that and stuff, but it seemingly was going on for a while where he had these voices in his head telling him other things. And so there are signs. It's a matter of like, are you willing to listen to them? And I think that's the
Yeah.
difference between an Anakin Skywalker in the prequels and a Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, right? Like
Hmm.
they make the same mistakes. Luke is just willing to listen to his mistakes, right? Like going back to Return of the Jedi, right? Surprise, Brandon's going to bring up the second Death Star throne room scene. But that really is a moment of harmony, right? When
Hmm.
he looks down at his hand and goes, I am not in sync with who I said I am going to be
Yeah.
when I walked in here, right? And then he immediately goes and throws his lightsaber away, not because it's going to win, right? Like I think we lose that and me included. We lose that reminder that like he gets his ass whipped right after that.
Yeah.
Like he almost dies right after that. But that's not what it's about. It's about him putting harmony over ego. And I think that that's really really important, and really how you tell the difference between when you're in harmony and not is like, are you putting your ego first or are you putting the betterment of yourself first? Because those two things are not always the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how then, like, do you in your life, because we've known each other for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
you are someone who I feel is very much at harmony in a lot of cases, and so like how do you stay aware of that in your life, and how do you bring awareness to your harmony, and what are there Star Wars examples that kind of guide you along in doing that?
Mm. Um, I think in terms of yeah, in terms of sort of managing the harmony in my own life, I think one of the things I do is that, as I talked about before, that sort of like gut check in terms of my own state of mind and where like my emotions are and like how I'm feeling. Am I sort of broadly optimistic, pessimistic, hopeful? Where am I? Where I'm at there. I think was something that really resonated that you were talking about just now is in terms of those like how you relate to those things that kind of traditionally give you that peace and purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I think I definitely found in my own life like when there's like tough times, whatever, like there's a lot going on or work is particularly stressful or like whatever, like personal things are going on, then like a lot of those kind of go-tos become a lot harder. Like it's much like
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to do things, it's easier to get distracted, it's easier to kind of put things off and kick the can down the road. And like you don't like those things don't give you the same sort of like spark that they usually do. And so yeah, that for me is like definitely tell like okay, like things like I'm going through a rough patch right now.
Yeah. And when you're going through those, like, are there Star Wars examples that you look at to help bring you back to center? Or on the flip side of that, are there warnings from Star Wars that you use to go like, "Hey, I got to remember, I don't want to be this guy. I don't want to do that thing."
Yeah, I'm trying to think about oh examples about I mean, I do think about that peace and purpose line from Last Jedi a
Mm,
lot. I think it's a
yeah.
really good line, and I think it is kind of like a sort of like North Star in terms of thinking of like of your own life and in terms of like the goals that you want to have. Like it does very neatly summarize at least like two important parts of a good life. Is like there's a sort of element of peace of like again like you are like your head is in a good place. You're like you're sort of in that kind of like nice like flow state. You're not too high, not too low, and then that sort of like purpose element of like the things that you are doing and the things that you are committing to like are also like not just making you like happy in that like I mean they are doing that like they're bringing you joy, but they're also giving that sort of like there's that sort of like deeper things that there's like deeper itches that they're scratching in terms of like fulfillment, and you're feeling like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're sort of contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. No, I like that contributing to something bigger than yourself idea, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really what harmony comes down to for me is like, are you adding to this bigger thing, to go back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, this bigger thing of the force, right, that
Yeah.
binds the galaxy together. And we're not going to be perfect at that, like when I look at my own harmony, my touch point is Ahsoka, right? And which Ahsoka am I being right now? Because there are times when she is very much at harmony with herself and her surroundings, and there are times when she's very much not so. You know, that's kind of honestly like her journey in season one of the Ahsoka series
Yeah.
is she's very out of sync at the beginning, and then we go through the world between worlds, and she comes out and she's Ahsoka the White, and she's very much at sync. And I love the moment when um her and oh god, well, I'm blanking. What's the droid's name?
Hu Yang.
Hu Yang. Yes, thank you. Gosh, I was like Two Boots. Two Boots is the only droid in my mind right now. Um, when her and Hu Yang are talking, they're going into the Purgil, and Hu Yang's like, I almost said called him Two Boots again. Hu Yang is like, how do you know this is going to work? And she's like, I don't. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is harmony. Right. It's I'm going to trust and have faith that this is going to work because I'm putting my best intentions forward. And if it doesn't work out that way, then I will adapt and adjust accordingly afterwards, because I know I am trying to be the best version of myself in this moment, right? Not in terms of trying to gain worth through it or anything like that, but just inherently I'm trying to be the best that I can be in this moment. I think that is the ultimate version of harmony.
Well said.
Well, on that, guys, I think we kind of came to a good closing point for the episode. Davor, do you have any like final thoughts or things you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to touch on as far as harmony in Star Wars?
I don't think so. I think we had a pretty good, well-rounded conversation here.
Yeah, this was fun. This was honestly, this is a chapter I've written already at this point of recording, and it was one of the harder ones to write because it is a very nuanced conversation, and I feel like hopefully we thread the needle well. And if you guys have stuff to contribute or add to the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. So make sure you're emailing us at clashingsabersnetwork@gmail.com, or hit us up on Blue Sky or TikTok or Instagram where we're at Clashing Sabers, because we love to hear from you guys and talk about it. We also have our Facebook group that you guys can add to, where you can, under this post or wherever, on YouTube, wherever you're at, like, we're not hard to find. But what does harmony in Star Wars mean to you guys? What does harmony in your own life mean to you guys? Like, we didn't even get to touch upon like daily practices like journaling or meditation or things like that can add to this, right? This could be an hours long conversation. This series is designed as, and the book is designed as a start to the conversation, not a thesis on it. So make sure you guys are contributing there. And Davor, if they want to find you and they think I'm useless and want to just talk to you, how can they find you?
All right. On social media, you can find me over at Blue Sky at Demondum. You can also listen to me as a co-host over on Philosophies, the Star Wars and Taylor Swift podcast that I host with my wife, the one and only Meg Dowell.
And if you like Meg, you probably like Star Wars books, and so go over and listen to her Star Wars books podcast, and make sure you go over to our Patreon and help put Star Wars books into classrooms across the country so we can get more people into Star Wars books. That's patreon.com/clashingsabers. And as I'm plugging that, I kind of realize the best example of harmony in Star Wars is it's not Gunji, it's not Qui-Gon, as great as he is. It doesn't happen in the desert of Tatooine. It doesn't happen in the halls of the Jedi Temple. No, it happens in an elevator on a Star Destroyer where Batch 8 reunites.
Hi-ho. It's that butt slap, man.
It's that butt slap, man. It's that butt slap. That's the one. Puts it all together, baby.
Yep.